salvation is free, but being his disciple is costly. And Jesus talked about the most costly element of being his disciple. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 to 25, it says, Jesus talked about the most costly element of being his disciple. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 to 25, it says, Then Jesus said to his disciples, Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. The cross is an instrument of death. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. And this is one of the most powerful verses in the Bible, because it addresses the very issue we see in Genesis 3, which is the beginning of self-life, of selfishness, of looking at yourself and not looking at God, because you see that Adam and Eve took their focus from God and focused on themselves. They're aware that they were naked, they were hiding, they were scared, they felt shame. And Jesus tells us to die to self. And obviously it's not a physical death, but it's the death to that self that dominates, that desires. And Jesus says he must be Lord of all. But you see in Genesis 3 that mankind, humans, became their own Lord. Obviously that's a lowercase L, Lord, yeah. But they became their own Lord. And so we have to die to self and allow Jesus to take over. And like what you were saying, if you think just because you say Jesus is Lord does not mean you truly mean Jesus is Lord, you have to actually invite him into your heart for him to dictate all your ways, all your thoughts, all your decisions, because we are sinners. And if we lean on our own understanding, we're not going to make rash decisions. We're going to fall on our faces and lead ourselves into pain and a lot of destruction.
Yeah, and we see it all the time when we think that, what I'm going to do is better, that my choices are better, that my mindset is better, that my thoughts are better. You are your own God. And the thing is, like, who pays the price then? Because for all the sin that we commit, there is a penalty. We are racking up that bill. So if you're your own God, like, are you going to save yourself? And that's exactly what's going to happen when we get to heaven. And, the reason that our flesh craves the sin is because it's not going with us. Like, our sin is not going with us. Like, he created the spirit. He gave us the spirit inside of us. And it says that the spirit is pretty much like our ticket into heaven, because our flesh we're going to die one day, and our flesh goes right back to the earth. So that's why it's in constant war, constant battle with one another. In James 1:10-15, it says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. We are all tempted when we're dragged away by our own evil desires and enticed. And when desire conceives, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, it gives birth to death. So overall, again, sin is just choosing the desire over God. Or it's just simply the easy way out, because it's easier to sit around and to do whatever you want. It's easier to spend your day watching Netflix and, to drink whenever you want, to sleep with whoever you want, to go party whenever you want and have no accountability. Of course, that's easier. But that's the thing. Sin is very short-sighted. Yeah. That's your flesh does not care. Your flesh is not going with you. And that's why we have to be aware, and we have to recognize that we are not called to be short-sighted and nearsighted. We're supposed to think long-term. And sin is going to think only about the now. And when we don't realize that, when we live by this, it becomes who we are. We talked about it a few episodes again, but when you practice these things, when you practice transgressions, when you practice things that go against God, it will become who you are. And those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. I was reading Romans today, and it was talking about, like, the one who is doing all of these things, they not only do them, even though God said that they clearly lead to death. So you not only do them, but you encourage those who practice them. Wow. Like, you accept it. Good. Yeah, and you promote it and you applaud it. And that's our generation today. It's not saying just accept my sin. Like, before it was at least that. Just accept me. Just accept my sin. Now it's like, applaud me for my sin. Praise me because of my sin. And that is so good. Such a direction. I don't even know the words. It's getting me all hyped up. direct connection. It'll lead us right down to hell. That's the broad path, and everybody's on it. That's why he says, do not conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind in Christ. I always like to say, if everybody's doing it, that's probably a sign that you shouldn't be doing
it's like a bad sign. Yeah, and I feel like that's why it's so important to have people in your corner that will call you out and call you for higher, because if the people in your corner are not calling you out when you're probably going to make a bad mistake, they're not your people. They're not the people that you need in your corner. And I do see that so much in our culture now, like with sleeping around with guys or girls, and just pushing all this stuff on us and encouraging it. It is so scary to see what the world is going to look like in like 10 years. I always think about that, but it's true because...
Yeah, well, that's why he's coming back. Eventually it's going to be like, there's no sign besides, it's going to be like the days of Noah.
Yeah.
And that's when he flooded the whole earth.
Yeah.
And, we can't be full of the Spirit. We're supposed to be of overflow, like that Spirit is supposed to be in us, and it's supposed to become the overflow, and that's what we give out to people. But we can't be full of the Spirit without being obedient to God. We can't be loving. We can't be joyful.